Before we get going, a couple things. First, I'm teaming with Cowbell Kingdom for a jersey giveaway. All you got to do is subscribe to my channel and Cowbell Kingdom's and follow some directions. The details will be in the description. Also, we're doing a countdown to the draft with an awesome podcast called Open Run. Subscribe to them on iTunes and look for our pod in the next few days. Thanks. Deandre Ayton is an astoundingly athletic, physically imposing, and highly coordinated 7'1", 250-pound center from Nassau, Bahamas, and he spent a controversial, turbulent year of college basketball at Arizona, where he played for the perpetually sweaty Sean Miller. Ayton is in a lineage of centers that very rarely comes along. Physically, he's stunning. He looks like he was created in a lab. A mountain of a man chiseled from marble. A veritable Greek god, or Bahamian god, I should say, I guess. Deandre came to the United States sometime around middle school and started to take basketball really seriously. During Deandre's junior year of high school, and to be honest, this seems kind of unbelievable, he actually teamed up with Marvin Bagley for a couple of months at Hillcrest Academy in Phoenix, Arizona. That seems like a pretty lethal combo. I'm trying to think of a worse one, maybe like migraine and root canal. Those two maybe could give him a game. Ayton sticks out on the floor in a way that only happens a handful of times in your life as a basketball fan. He's definitely one of those whoa type guys the first time you see him in the context of a game. Similar to the way Shaq looked on the floor at LSU. Ayton's size, athleticism, and skill level are reminiscent of another time. His measurements aren't as freakish as Mo Bamba, but he's got a 7'5" wingspan, a 43.5-inch vertical. Woo! His fluidity and size rouse memories of the centers from the early 90s, guys like Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Akeem Olajuwon. He's not as mobile or as quick as Akeem or the Admiral, and defensively I think he's behind all three guys. But offensively I think it's possible that he's slightly ahead of those guys at the same age. It's interesting to me that among these spry 7-footers, and I'll toss Joel Embiid in here too, being exposed to soccer at an early age seems to be a real commonality. Maybe we should start pressuring every taller than normal kid to start dribbling around with his feet first. Hear me out. If we were really the basketball-loving nation that we say we are, doctors should be issuing soccer balls to every kid that is even slightly ahead of schedule. As a country, I don't see any problem with that. What's the worst that could happen? I mention gravity in basketball often because I think there are a ton of parallels to be drawn. Basketball is like outer space, in my opinion. The greater and bigger certainly helps too, and more diversely skilled the player, the more gravitational pull they have on the court. And the more of those you have, the more complicated it becomes for a defense to react. It's why the Warriors and the Rockets have become so difficult to defend in the past few years. Skill, especially when it has size, I'm looking at you LeBron, equals spacing. For me, it's a helpful way to think about what a team is lacking. So when you're adding a guy as big and as capable as Deandre Ayton to your solar system, you're taking gravity away from your other players and becoming a much more difficult team to deal with offensively. This is why the mere idea of Ayton is so valuable.
You got the touch. You got the power.
It's one thing to be 7'1" and have the body of someone who took the super soldier serum, nerdy joke, but it's quite another to have the deft touch and grace that Ayton has around the rim and shooting the ball. Tip-ins, agile finishes, the wrangling of tough entry passes. Deandre is a rare breed when it comes to his blend of gifts. Every time you go look up an offensive efficiency stat to brag about Marvin Bagley, and I've done this, nearly without fail, Ayton will be on the same list, and he's often ahead of him. He rebounds well, snagging 21.4% of all rebounds, often without blocking out, I might add. He's second in the country in player efficiency rating, top 20 in field goal percentage. Deandre is not a wasteful offensive player. He doesn't force bad shots, and he's great about making use of the touches that he gets. I'm not sure why he didn't shoot more at Arizona, but I have my guesses. Ayton has all of the basic boxes checked for a guy his size. He can catch, he runs, he rebounds, but he can also lay down the law around the basket. He does not suffer smaller players gladly around the rim, and you don't typically see him going around people inside. If given the opportunity, he will put Thor's hammer on your head. He is a thunderous dunker with a head of steam. He doesn't shy away from contact at all. He also catches passes well in traffic and seems to rarely fumble balls as he goes to finish. As a lob catcher, I didn't really see him doing a ton of high-flying rim runs. He seems to really prefer to either slip screens or barely make contact for one reason or another. Ayton can often seem like a bowling ball trying to roll around pins. He can be a little awkward at times, but that's mainly because he's just so big. It does seem sometimes that he's making his moves a bit slow, seemingly indecisive or unsure about how to tackle what the defense is presenting him. He does have a pretty promising back to the basket repertoire already when he's deliberate about getting touches there. His jumper seems to be more elbow and arm than wrist at this point, and it's fairly flat, but it's hardly a discouraging starting point. His face-up game is developing quickly. He loves to take that 10 to 15 footer facing up, maybe a bit too much at times, and he's pretty efficient from that range. Currently not taking many of those shots in back to the basket situations, but I think he's capable. He's also shown some ability to hit spot-up threes, going 34% from deep this season. I don't see him shooting many threes off the dribble or in traffic. He's in the mold of Embiid in that he can occasionally make you pay from three. When a guy's 7'1" and as far along shooting the ball as Ayton, I try not to go bonkers busting on his shot mechanics. With some work, I think that he could be a pretty dependable shooter in the pick and pop, and in time a reasonable threat from three. He's also a capable and evolving passer both on the interior and out of double teams. To this point, a big criticism of Ayton's game has been his motor. I've heard a lot of people say that. I think there's some truth to that, but there might be something else going on. There are times where I wonder if Deandre's behind a bit and how quickly he's thinking the game. You can see this in his offensive decision making too, like we talked about. But the more natural a player's decisions and reaction time becomes, the better that feel appears and functions. This is why Draymond Green is such a phenomenal defender. He's reacting nearly as quickly as the offensive player is making the choice, and he's often correctly predicting the next move. We're talking about instinctive basketball. With Deandre, this shows up in a couple of places, to my eye. First, Ayton often struggles to be a defensive anchor because he too often loses sight of rotationally where he should be on the floor. He often miscalculates his north-south position on the floor and allows preventable straight-line drives or wildly overcommits to ball handlers. Laterally, he's shown some really amazing potential switching pick and roll, and he does a solid job bothering perimeter shooters, but his north-south foot speed does seem to be a little fumbling and labored at times. He also seems to either lack the urgency or the reaction time to protect the rim, and this one is kind of troubling. He does swallow up the occasional block. He almost averaged 2 a game, but Ayton seems to just get straight up shot over the top of a lot, way more than you would like. He also seems fairly oblivious to weak side challenges at times. Lots of instances where Deandre should see where the back line of the defense is or that he's needed as a help defender with that massive length of his, and he just doesn't help. Like I said, some of it could be timing, some of it could be staying engaged or improving his understanding and his instinctive feel of defensive rotations, but this is a missing piece of the puzzle for Deandre. It's worrisome. You don't like to weigh NCAA tournament games too much, but just as an example, the fleet of highly skilled guards for Buffalo, they just roasted Ayton because he would get so out of position. Just because you have a V10 600 horsepower car does not mean that you have Mario Andretti behind the wheel.
If I was your size, I'd be king of the world.
Ayton is hardly a project, let's not be severe. He's 7'1", 250 pounds, has a plus wingspan, exceptionally soft touch for a big man, passes it well, was somehow third in the country in rebounding without ever blocking out, he has an eye-popping 43.5-inch vertical. He's sitting in the driver's seat of that V10 600 horsepower car. That's just too much size and demonstrated natural ability to pass up for teams at the top of the lottery. Also important to consider, his lone season at Arizona was surrounded by distraction and wildly inconsistent guard play. There were guards in and out of the lineup all year. Like Bagley and Jaren Jackson, he was also playing in a dual big man lineup that could have affected his production. I can really only think of 2 occasions where taking a big guy this talented was a colossal mistake. Sadly, both examples involved injuries and the city of Portland. Sorry for bringing that up, Portland. My head tells me that Ayton is the type of guy that you just don't pass on, but why don't I feel rock solid about that in my hoops heart? Ayton is like that girl that you're dating that has good taste in music and movies and is fun to be around, but there's just something doubtful in the pit of your stomach. What's going to have to be around Ayton to compensate for some of those instinctive deficiencies? deficiencies. The counter to the doubt that I feel and that a lot of people feel is that I don't think it's a stretch to say that Deandre has the realistic potential to ascend to nearly the highest status if things go well in his development. This guy could possibly be a top 10 player in the league or higher. That's not ridiculous. As much as I love Luka Doncic and Marvin Bagley, I just think that's too fantastic a possible future to pass on, and I don't think Phoenix will be able to. Let me know if you agree. Hey folks, I appreciate you watching, and if you like this video, click the like button and be sure to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter at JKyleMann. Say hey.